Okay, magandang araw po sa inyong lahat. Welcome again sa ating channel, Sir Lopez Vlog. Sa araw na ito ay magkakaroon muli tayo ng self-evaluation dito sa subject na personal identification. Subject ito ng mga second year na naka-enroll sa course of criminology. Ang mga kasagutan sa mga katanungan ito ay makikita natin sa description box. Okay? So, let us start. Question number 1. Blank is a ridge that curves back in the direction from which it started. Letter A, diverging ridge. Letter B, recurving ridge. Letter C, bifurcation ridge. Or letter D, converging ridge. Number 2. In secondary division of classification, the small letter groups to be included are the following, except letter A, plain arc, letter B, tented arc, letter C, ulnar loop, or letter D, radial loop. Number 3. In the capital letter groups of secondary division of classification, what is the numerator? Letter A, right thumb, letter B, index finger, letter C, left little finger, or letter D, right index finger. Number 4. In the capital letter groups of secondary division of classification, what is the numerator? Letter A, right thumb, letter B, index finger, letter C, left little finger, or letter D, right index finger. Number 5. When a type line bifurcates, the blank branch of the bifurcation is considered as the continuation of the type line. Letter A, inner, letter B, outer, letter C, left side, or letter D, right side. Number 6. It is that division of the fingerprint classification that is always represented by a numerical value. Letter A, primary classification. Letter B, secondary classification. Letter C, subsecondary classification. Or letter D, K classification. Number 7. In the secondary classification, what is the denominator? Letter A, even numbers in the 10 sets of fingerprint patterns. Letter B, odd numbers in the 10 sets of fingerprint patterns. Letter C, fingerprint patterns in the left hand. Or letter D, fingerprint patterns in the right hand. Number 8. Ridges that are running side by side, suddenly separating, one going one way and the other going another way. Letter A, recurving ridge. Letter B, diverging ridge. Letter C, bifurcation ridge. Or letter D, converging ridge. Number 9. What fingerprint pattern is consisting of two loops in one pattern? Letter A, accidental whorl. Letter B, double loop whorl. Letter C, ulnar loop. Letter D, radial loop. Number 10. One ridge which forks or splits into two ridges. Letter A, recurving ridge. Letter B, diverging ridge. Letter C, bifurcation ridge. Letter D, converging ridge. 11. Blank is a pattern that is a combination of two or more different types of patterns. Letter A, accidental whorl. Letter B, double loop whorl. Letter C, central pocket loop whorl. Or letter D, radial loop. Number 12. In secondary classification, what is the numerator? Letter A. Even numbers in the 10 sets of fingerprint patterns. Letter B. Odd numbers in the 10 sets of fingerprint patterns. Letter C. Fingerprint patterns in the left hand. Or letter D. Fingerprint patterns in the right hand. Number 13. Blank is that part which lies within the area surrounded by the type lines. Letter A, pattern area. Letter B, type lines. Letter C, core. Or letter D, fingerprint. Number 14. What is the symbol for accidental whorl? Letter A, capital B. Letter B, capital X. Letter C, capital W. Or letter D, capital C. 15. In the primary classification, what pattern has no numerical values? Letter A, plain arc. Letter B, ulnar loop. Letter C, dented arc. Or letter D, all of them. 16. Blank is that part of a fingerprint in which are found the cores, deltas, and other ridges pertaining to a particular pattern type. Letter A, pattern area. Letter B, type lines. Letter C, core. Or letter D, fingerprint. 17. In the primary classification, what whorl pattern in the right hand has a 4 numerical value? Letter A, index finger. Letter B, middle finger. Letter C, ring finger. Or letter D, little finger. 18. This division is obtained by writing or copying the capital letter symbols taken from the index fingers and the small letters from the thumb, middle, ring, and little fingers. Letter A, primary classification. Letter B, secondary classification. Letter C, subsecondary classification. Or letter D, K classification. 19. The heart of the fingerprint pattern. Letter A, delta. Letter B, core. Letter C, spur. Or letter D, both A and B. 20. In the pure Henry system of fingerprint classification and filing, we are concerned with core formation only in blank type patterns. Letter A, loop. Letter B, whorl. Letter C, arc. Or letter D, loop and whorl. 21. An Old Greek word N is the fourth letter of the Greek alphabet. Letter A, alpha. Letter B, omega. Letter C, delta. Or letter D, bravo. Dito, in pattern in which there is only a single recurving ridge, the core is at the shoulder on the blank. Letter A, nearer side of the loop from the delta. Letter B, farther side of the loop from the delta. Letter C, both are correct depending of the finger. Or letter D, both are wrong. 23. In determining the core of a loop pattern which shows one or more rods within the central loop, only those rods which rise up to or above the shoulders of the loop are taken as a core. Letter A, true. Letter B, false. 24. You look at the illustration. On the upper fingerprint patterns are the right hand and the lower fingerprint patterns are the left hand. On the extreme left is the thumb and the extreme right is the little finger. 24. What is the numerator of the secondary classification in the capital letter group? Letter A, capital D. Letter B, capital W. Letter C, capital T. Or letter D, capital R. 25. What is the secondary classification of the fingerprint pattern appearing in the right thumb? Letter A, dash. Letter B, capital U. Letter C, small letter T. Or letter D, small letter R. Maraming salamat at natapos na natin ang ating self-evaluation sa araw na ito. So, mangyari lamang na i-check nyo na ang inyong mga kasagutan at para malaman kung tayo ay pumasa sa subject na ito. Okay, so hanggang sa muli, maraming salamat at magandang araw po sa inyong lahat.